And join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson and broadcaster Dee Kelly. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 4 o'clock. I'm Miranda Shunker in the GB newsroom. The Archbishop of York has joined the leader of the Church of England in criticising the government's plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. The government says the decision will stem the flow of migrants unlawfully crossing the Channel. But speaking at York Minster, Stephen Cottrell said he found the deal depressing and distressing. In his Easter sermon at Canterbury Cathedral, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, said the Home Office plans are the opposite of the nature of God.
This season is also why there are such serious ethical questions about sending asylum seekers overseas. The details are for politics and politicians. The principle must stand the judgment of God, and it cannot.
Well, a spokeswoman for the Rwandan government, Yolan Makolo, told GB News she hopes more countries will copy the UK.
Migration should be looked at differently. People should be offered opportunities to live dignified lives wherever they are in the world, and we hope more countries will join up. Rwanda in 2019 was the first one to host refugees from migrants from Libya, endangered from Libya. We have over 700 of them who've passed through here. We hope that this new innovative model will also be emulated by other countries. Then we can do more together.
Boris Johnson has paid tribute to Christians in Ukraine during his Easter Sunday address. His comments come as the Ministry of Defence said Russia's ultimate objective remains the same, despite shifting its operational focus to eastern Ukraine. Yesterday, the Prime Minister was among several senior British politicians banned from entering Russia by the Kremlin. Speaking partly in Ukrainian, Mr. Johnson urged those in the country to be strong and have courage in your heart.
Those around the world facing fear of persecution, forced to celebrate their saviour's rebirth in secret, and of course, the Christians of Ukraine, whether they're marking Easter today or its Orthodox equivalent later this month, for whom Christ's message of hope, the triumph of life over death and good over evil, will resonate this year perhaps more than any other. Будьте сильні і майте в серці odvahu. Всі, хто вповаючи на Господа.
Ukrainian soldiers have appeared to defy a Russian ultimatum to surrender in the besieged city of Mariupol. Moscow claims the steelworks is now the only area of the city not under its control. Elsewhere in the country, at least 2 people have been killed and 4 injured this morning as shelling hit the eastern town of Zolote. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine's defence of Mariupol continues despite Russia's attacks.
The situation is certainly not improving on a daily basis. Our military is blocked, and with them, the wounded people are blocked. There are many dead. Unfortunately, there is a humanitarian catastrophe with shortage of food, water, and no medications. However, the guys defend heroically. We're grateful to them for that. To be honest, there is no trust in the Russian negotiators about Mariupol.
Fresh allegations are being made over the Prime Minister's conduct in the ongoing Partygate scandal. The Sunday Times claims Boris Johnson led the celebrations at a leaving do for his former press chief during lockdown. Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner says if the latest reports are true, the Prime Minister's actions are indefensible. Mr Johnson is expected to update MPs when they return to the Commons on Tuesday. Officials in South Africa say at least 443 people have died in flooding in the country. Heavy rains have damaged roads, homes and electricity supplies in the KwaZulu-Natal province. Thousands of people have been left homeless too. The government says it will cost hundreds of millions of dollars to rebuild infrastructure. And 2 people have died and at least 11 people have been injured after being shot at a party in the US. A warning to those watching on TV, the following clip contains flashing images. Authorities in the city of Pittsburgh say the shooting happened shortly after midnight at a rental property where nearly 200 people had gathered for a party. The city's public safety department says investigations are ongoing. Well, this is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now let's return to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, what on earth do those in the church know about the real world? Huddled away in opulent gold leaf-clad temples, in extravagant settings, in stone buildings that to build now would cost a fortune, drinking from a selection of gold chalices which no person on a normal salary could afford, used for drinking the blood of Christ, symbolised by red wine, which, when you think about drinking someone's blood, doesn't really sit well, whilst preaching how we should be more giving and forgiving. Many have given themselves to Christ, so remain celibate, but yet give relationship advice. No mortgage, no kids, and plenty of free time to do God's work, whatever that is. This morning, the Most Reverend Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, said this about sending migrants to Rwanda at his Easter address.
And this season is also why there are such serious ethical questions about sending asylum seekers overseas. The details are for politics and politicians. The principle must stand the judgment of God, and it cannot. It cannot carry the weight of resurrection justice, of life conquering death. It cannot carry the weight of the resurrection that was announced first to the least valued, for it privileges the rich and the strong. And it cannot carry the weight of our national responsibility as a country formed by Christian values, because subcontracting out our responsibilities even to a country that seeks to do well like Rwanda is the opposite of the nature of God, who himself took responsibility for our failures on the cross.
Right, let's break that down. He said the principle must stand the judgment of God. Surely the principle is to deter people from taking a very dangerous crossing in the first instance. I mean, that is not a bad principle. Also, trying to stop the people trafficking model, that principle is a deterrent. He also said it cannot carry the weight of resurrection justice, of life conquering death. It cannot carry the weight of the resurrection that was first to the least valued, for it privileges the rich and strong. Nobody in the real world speaks like that. I'm not quite sure what all that means. But what is his solution? This isn't the first time, actually, that the Archbishop has got involved, and on many of the issues I actually agree with him. But should religion be getting involved in this way? He denounced Boris Johnson for his rule of 6 during COVID, and he has talked about his disappointment over Partygate. Look, I went to an all-girls Catholic convent boarding school, which means it was run by nuns. It was an incredible experience. I also studied philosophy and theology. Religious studies was my favourite and best subject. I took Holy Communion, but stopped at the bit where I could properly make a decision. I chose not to be confirmed because by that stage I'd become disillusioned by the whole setup. Religion is a great thing to have, but the way I understood it was that those who dedicated their lives would properly get involved in the community and live more modest lives. Take Mother Teresa. She didn't worship in an opulent temple and have extravagant gowns and drink out of gold cups. What I see within the church is a level of hypocrisy and self-righteous preaching, as though many in these churches believe they have a hotline to God. You only need to look at the Vatican, which to me, it's more like a mafia. It's extremely wealthy, many popes seen with expensive and ornate jewellery. It's one of the richest institutions in the world. Then there are scandals like the paedophilia that's rocked the very foundation of the church. So for it to talk about ungodliness, whilst I have every respect for those who follow the faith and for many of the moral beliefs and ideals contained within the Bible, sadly, many of those with the calling tasked for spreading the word often fall short. This is disheartening, and it seems the very opposite of what it is actually meant to achieve. I don't believe that it should get involved in politics, but what do you think? So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. Have you ever wanted to have a peek inside the SAS? Well, stay with me, because each Sunday at 5 o'clock I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And today I'll be joined in the studio by SAS veteran, author and champion of the Army Cadets, Phil Campion, who's just released a brand new book, Who Dares Wins. The Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should civil servants interfere with government policy? The FDA union is warning that the Home Secretary Priti Patel could face mass walkouts of Home Office staff who oppose plans to send asylum seekers in the UK at thousands of miles away to Rwanda. So I'm asking, should civil servants interfere with government policy? And we'll get the latest from Ukraine in World View. I'll be joined by Keir Giles from Chatham House to discuss the tense situation in Mariupol, as an advisor to the mayor says they'll continue to defend the area. Earlier, Russia had said that it would spare the lives of Ukrainian soldiers if they laid down their arms. And I have the exclusive. Our very own Calvin Robertson is here, hot off the press. He's in the Sunday Express today. He's claiming bishops of the Church of England are blocking his attempt to become a priest. Find out why. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me @gbnews. Right, let's get started. Welcome again to my panel, Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson and also broadcaster Dee Kelly. Look at that afro, it's getting so big. It's kind of squaring out at the back, though.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's because I've been on the train, so it's
that's
flattened.
You've been leaning on two sides of something and
I know.
it's going upwards. Well, I'm going to start with you, Calvin, obviously, because you are, you're getting involved in religion in quite a big way.
Yeah.
What is your view on some of the involvement of the church within things like, for example, the migrant crisis and the comments made by the Archbishop?
First of all, happy Easter.
Happy Easter!
It's troubling. It's a difficult question. Should the church get involved in politics? And I know what you mean. You mean like party politics, you mean government politics. On that level, no. When the Archbishop of York says that this policy, he finds it depressing and distressing, I think, well, who cares? We don't really care what your thoughts on this policy are. That's not what we're asking you about. And when the Archbishop of Canterbury says this is ungodly to be sending illegal immigrants to Rwanda, I think, what's ungodly about Rwanda? I think that's quite insulting, to be honest. But again, it's none of his business. This is Easter. This is the most important holy day in our religion. He should be all over the papers, all over the media, saying, Christ is risen, you are saved. God came to earth as man incarnate to die for your sins. Therefore, you get to live forever in Christ. That's what he should be saying. Not, actually, I don't believe with the Conservative government. I don't like what they're doing. I don't like their policies. I think it's ungodly. That is wrong. And that's what's happening in the Church of England right now. That's where the numbers are falling in decline rapidly. This is why people are leaving in droves, because they don't want to hear wokeness. They don't want to hear left-wing politics. They want to hear about our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ. That's the only job of the church, and they're not doing it. It's political pandering.
They should be talking about the celebration of Easter itself, not actually. And the other thing about this is that if they feel that way, I mean, there are plenty of great missionaries like Jackie Pullinger and the Walled City, where people like that went away to these places that he's calling ungodly, country and actually put their efforts in helping. So, you know, why doesn't he leave this wonderful, you know, building that he's living in and staying in and go and help in those places that he's calling ungodly? I don't quite see.
Right, but we've also got so many illegal immigrants fleeing this terrible war-stricken country of France to get to the United Kingdom over the Channel, which is obviously a joke. It's just stupid that people are leaving a very, very safe country to get over here. It's not for their lives, it's for economic reasons, clearly. But people are illegally crossing the Channel Tunnel, putting their lives at risk. Not only are they doing that, but people smugglers are putting people in unsafe vessels to get them over. So this system is deterring people from doing that. It's helping save lives. So it's very godly.
Yeah.
So does he not want people's lives to be saved? Of course, what he's suggesting is that we should have open borders and anyone from anywhere should be welcome into the United Kingdom because that's a very left liberal thing to believe. But it doesn't work like that in the real world. Borders are important and a government's number one task is to protect national security and protect our borders.
Perhaps he could have some more people in that cathedral, maybe they could stay there. Danny, what do you think?
Good afternoon. I think what he said was, he didn't qualify it or put it into any context. I think what he means when he says it's ungodly, I don't think he's even contemplating referencing the nightmare trips, the dinghies and all of that sort of stuff. What he's saying is that once they actually get into this country, it's ungodly or it's unchristian to ship them out to Rwanda. I think that's his point. What he should have said is, OK, I understand that it could be a deterrent, I get that, but when they're actually on British soil, I think it's ungodly to... You're right, he's a globalist, he wants open borders. And this is a clash of religion with what it's like to live in the real world. You know, that text was written thousands of years ago. And, you know, there are real-world issues, here and now issues, which affect... And mass unfettered immigration can affect people in the UK right now, here and now. It has negative consequences for a lot of people. So I think this guy is, from his religious position, and is it ungodly to ship off people to Rwanda when they want to make a life in the UK? It probably is ungodly.
Why?
He doesn't take... Well, because Christ wouldn't put them on an aircraft and send them to Africa when they needed help.
Christ would stop them from getting on the dinghy.
Well, that's my earlier point. He should have qualified it. He should have said, look, I understand it's a deterrent, I get that, but once they're here...
We're not sending people to detention centres.
No, I know we're not.
We're putting them somewhere to be processed
I
properly,
agree.
Rather than what we don't have a proper...
Calvin, I agree with you.
So I know you agree, but I don't understand why you think that this would be...
Because Christ would welcome them into his family. That's his point. If Christ was alive, he would welcome them and make space for them.
But we're not saying they're not going to be welcomed. We've got to process them. We've got to find out if
they can't just come
are
straight in.
a refugee or not, or
Calvin,
if they're illegal immigrants.
I know, but they're going to be processed in Africa,
Why
which is a
does that
safe
make a
country.
difference?
Well, he would say it's ungodly. He said process them here.
Well,
that's my point. I don't agree with him.
I just don't get it.
I don't get it either, but I don't agree with him. But that's
Calvin,
his position.
I want to ask you this, because I didn't quite understand what he was talking about. He said it cannot carry the weight of resurrection justice, of the conquering, of life conquering death. It cannot carry the weight of the resurrection that was first to the least valued, for it privileges the rich and the strong. What does that mean?
That is exactly the point.
You see?
There's a whole another language, church language. These people, the hierarchy, the bishops, they're so... I mean, they are the metropolitan liberal elite. They're so in their own echo chamber that they think that makes sense. They think they're talking to normal people. Normal people don't understand that. That's just mumbo-jumbo. You know, these people are the same people that when we have any political issue that they don't like, they'll come out and speak about it. Brexit. All the bishops came out and spoke about Brexit. Dominic Cummings, they didn't like him, they came out and spoke about him. When do they come out and say, actually, we want to fight against abortion because that is against our religion? When do they come out and say, actually, we want to address this issue of transgenderism because people should feel comfortable in their bodies and we want to support people and let them know that God made them that way and they should be happy in their bodies? When does the church come out and fight for its values, rather than coming out to fight against conservative policies?
Or on the other hand, because I don't think any of the mainstream media might even mention that it doesn't really make much sense. Perhaps they could, because everyone will play this speech and say, this is what he said, and nobody will actually say, look, actually, to you and I, this is actually what he was saying, and just in normal speak, can you just say what you mean? And that's the problem, it's this detachment with reality and the detachment of those who would be coming to the church but don't, because they haven't got a clue what's going on and don't know what they're saying. Right, well, Calvin, I've got to say, you made the Sunday Express today. You have accused the Church of England of holding you back because of your conservative views. We will talk more about that at 5:30, but in about 60 seconds, just give us a taster.
In 60 seconds, okay. I believe that we should return to scripture for our Christian values, our Christian teaching, rather than trying to chase society. I don't think we should get with the times, because I think people are sick and tired of political correctness and wokeness, and we should return to Christian teaching, British values, Christian values, and find out what is morally right and wrong in scripture, rather than what looks okay today.
Right, wonderful. We'll find out why his attempts to become a priest are potentially being blocked. Stay with us. We'll be talking about that at 5:30. If you've just joined me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, it is time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should civil servants interfere with government policy? Unions are warning that the Home Office could see mass walkouts of staff who oppose the policy to send migrants to Rwanda. The FDA union says that staff could request transfers or leave the civil service entirely. What, not work from home then? Or you have to get a job and actually leave your house. So I'm asking, should civil servants interfere with government policy? Stay tuned. Send us your thoughts as well. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Tell me what you think. You can also send us a tweet at GBNews. And I currently have a poll up right now asking, should civil servants interfere with government policy? Cast your vote now, but first, let's get some weather.
And the UK is looking dry in the east, but rain will continue edging into the west. Let's take a look at the details. After a mainly dry day, showery outbreaks of rain will steadily move eastwards across the southwest of England later this afternoon and into the evening on a freshening southwesterly breeze. The southeast will end Easter Sunday on a dry note. Sunshine will turn hazy through the afternoon as high cloud spreads in from the west. Outbreaks of showery rain will also be edging eastwards across Wales into the evening. These could be heavy at times, especially in the west. It'll be a dry, bright and warm end to the day for the Midlands. It'll turn cloudier through the afternoon and into the evening, but remain dry until after sunset. The northeast of England will also have a dry and bright end to Easter Sunday with some sunny spells. Cloud will increase here from the west through the afternoon with rain expected overnight. Rain in the west of Scotland will slowly start to edge eastwards into the evening. After a warm and sunny day in the east, cloud will increase ahead of the rain. Rain, which has persisted for most of the day over Northern Ireland, will gradually clear this afternoon with sunny spells and showers following from the west. It'll feel fresher too. Tomorrow, rain in the west will steadily move across the UK overnight, clearing all but the far east coast by tomorrow morning. And that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yeah.
You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And of course, I'm still with my fabulous panel, broadcaster Dee Kelly and also Conservative advisor Calvin Robinson. You're an advisor now, are you?
I've been an advisor.
You were a commentator before.
I was a commentator 5 minutes ago, but now I'm advising.
Who do you advise?
What's he done? Right, well, listen,
I can't say.
Before the break, we were discussing the Archbishop of Canterbury's comments over the government's plan to send some asylum seekers from the UK to Rwanda. He called it the opposite of the nature of God. So I've been asking, should the church actually get political? Let's see what you've said. Paul says, Nana, you are bang on right in that senior churchmen should not comment on political matters. They should concentrate on teaching the 10 Commandments. And that would be, they are the basics, but a lot of people don't know them. Fiona says Calvin is demonstrating the same hypocrisy as he accuses Justin Welby of. He's preaching religion and yet is a political commentator. He's an advisor.
I'm training to become a priest, so I think I can talk about religion too. Thank you very much.
And also, his title's changed from commentator to advisor, just so you know. I don't know why. And Dottie says, totally agree with all you said regarding religion getting involved in politics. Also about the riches of the church, pure hypocrisy. Yeah, keep those thoughts coming. It's lovely to hear them at GB News or one at GBViews at gbnews.uk. It is the same address to get involved with our great British debate, which it is now time for. And I'm asking, should civil servants interfere with government policy? Unions are warning that the Home Secretary Priti Patel could face a mass walkout of civil servant staff as they protest against the government's plans to send asylum seekers from the UK to Rwanda. The Home Secretary had to issue a ministerial direction. That's a formal instruction from ministers to proceed with a spending proposal, despite objection from a permanent secretary for civil servants to sign off on the Rwanda asylum plan. Now, it is thought that the Home Office staff opposed the policy on legal or ethical grounds and could now request transfers or leave the civil service altogether. So I'm asking, should civil servants interfere with government policy? Well, I'm joined now by Dave Penman. He's the General Secretary of the FDA Union. That stands for the First Division of Civil Servants. Is that the right thing, Dave? So, Dave, why do you think that civil servants are taking a stand against this policy?
Well, firstly, they're not taking a stand. What happened was the permanent secretary, who's also the accounting officer, so he's responsible for the money that's spent. And what he said to the Home Secretary was that there wasn't evidence to say that actually this would be value for money. It wasn't clear that it would deter people from crossing the channel. And therefore, when there is that doubt about it, he asks for this ministerial direction and says, I'm not convinced that the numbers add up, but if you want me to go ahead with it, I will, but you just need to take responsibility for that and take accountability for it. And that's what happened. So it wasn't about opposing the policy on that. Clearly, there are wider concerns. Just like in the country, this is quite a divisive policy. It will be divisive amongst civil servants as well. But civil servants also know that their job is to deliver the policy of the government of the day. So they either choose to do that or they have to leave because that's the nature of their job. They really don't get a choice to say no.
Yeah, but sort of reading between the lines, I mean, take a stand or whatever, it sounds like some of them are threatening to leave in a sense if the policy is carried out. Is that where this is at?
Well, that's their only choice, because when you agree to become a civil servant, when you take that job, it's on the basis that you will serve the government of the day. You know that. And if you work in the Home Office, then you know you're going to be dealing with some of the most difficult policy areas in government. So none of this will come as a surprise to people when they become civil servants, that their job is to deliver government policy. But if someone feels that actually they can't do that, and there's an area of policy like this, which is quite a divisive one, as you can tell from the debate about it, then their only choice is to leave, because other than that, as a civil servant, they've got to implement it. So I think for some people, they may feel this is a step too far and that they can't support it and they don't want to do it. They may move elsewhere within the Home Office, another government department, or leave altogether.
Because that, to me, sounds like people saying taking a stand, actually, threatening to leave and then being prepared to leave. That does sound like taking a stand. I mean, for example, if I didn't want to do my job, then I would have to leave. It's not... But do you think, in your view, that civil servants should actually be involved in trying to sway that policy? Or, because in a way, it does sound like, I mean, for example, Border Force at one point said they wouldn't enforce the rules that Priti Patel had put in place. They didn't want to do what she was asking them to do. And again, they are servants of the public in a sense. So is it down to them to be doing that?
Well, they don't do that. They have their own professional code. So their job is to advise government. They give evidence-based advice to government, and that's in the Civil Service Code that says that's what they should do. Ministers in the Ministerial Code, it says they should listen to that evidence-based advice, but it's up to ministers to make decisions. So, of course, civil servants are trying to influence policy because that's what they're paid to do. They're paid to look at the facts, give advice to ministers and say, we think this would work or that wouldn't work based on what the government wants to do. But this is an area of policy that clearly is dividing the country around the nature of it. And if you're a civil servant, you agree to implement that policy. And your only choice, if you don't agree with that, is to leave, because you can't refuse to do it. So civil servants are not going to refuse to implement government policy. Most of them will do it. It's just that some, on the nature of this, something as divisive this, might choose to leave. And that's obviously the only choice they've got, because if they want to remain a civil servant, their job is to deliver government policy.
Well, Dave, thank you very much for your thoughts. That's Dave Penman. He's the General Secretary of the FDA Union. I'm also joined by Frank Ferretti, who's an author and academic. Frank, thank you for joining us. Do you think the government need to crack down on the civil service to stop this sort of unrest from happening continuously?
I think there's a very real problem, because, to be sure, civil servants have the right to give advice on any policy. That's absolutely within their remit. But what's been happening is that a lot of civil servants want to have their cake and eat it too, so that, for example, in the Home Office and elsewhere, there seems to be a reluctance to carry out certain policy. And maybe using the word sabotage is a little bit too strong, but there's a sense in which policies that the government has decided upon somehow aren't really implemented, or at least not implemented effectively. And what I'm really worried about is that if Priti Patel, for example, decides that this is the way we're going forward as far as illegal immigration is concerned, and she kind of puts forward a plan, there will be a lot of people within the civil service who will do their best to make sure that this policy will not be implemented effectively. And so I think there is a kind of a real difficulty here, because in many, many issues, the government finds it very, very difficult to actually get their policies successfully implemented, just because there is a kind of political opposition that's built up, which is under the surface. And it's not the case that when civil servants disagree with the government, they just simply leave and get another job. What happens is that they kind of stand back and in a very passive way sort of make sure that the policy doesn't get implemented in the right kind of a way.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I was talking about. Dave seemed to think that they would just leave if they didn't like the idea of what they were doing. But I would put it to him that actually people can make it difficult for the job to get done. And it seems that they seem to be exerting a level of power. Do you think that perhaps they have a little bit too much power? And also, how do you feel about their protest and unrest over the Rwanda decision?
Well, what I'm really worried about is that there is a sense in which that the civil service, at least a section of the civil service, has become a law unto itself, so that they don't simply play the role of public servants. They themselves decide, which policies they like and which policies they don't like, and they act in accordance with that. So what we have is a very difficult situation where sooner or later the government will have to do something if it wants to act speedily and effectively. And certainly in the Home Office, the Foreign Office, for example, people dealing with education have found it almost impossible to push the button and expect the right kind of a result. So one of these days, we are going to need to have some strong ministers who will say, these are the policies that I've decided on. I want to see results by tomorrow at the latest, or the day after tomorrow, rather than just simply expect that this thing will just go carry on and drift away in the way it's the case at the moment.
Yeah. Well, listen, Frank, thank you so much for your thoughts. That's Frank Ferretti. He's an author and an academic. Right. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll continue with our great British debate. I'm asking, should civil servants interfere with government policy? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson and also broadcaster Dee Kelly. First, let's get your latest news headlines. Thank you. It's 4:34. I'm Miranda Shunker in the GB newsroom.
First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has been reported to police after footage appeared to show her breaching Scotland's COVID face covering laws while campaigning. A video posted on social media apparently showed the First Minister not wearing a mask during a visit to a barber's in South Lanarkshire yesterday. Police Scotland confirmed they've received a complaint which is currently being assessed. The Archbishop of York has joined the Archbishop of Canterbury in criticising the government's plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. The government says the decision will stem the flow of migrants crossing the Channel. Speaking at York Minster, Stephen Cottrell said he found the deal depressing and distressing. In his Easter sermon at Canterbury Cathedral, Justin Welby said the plans are the opposite of the nature of God.
And this season is also why there are such serious ethical questions about sending asylum seekers overseas. The details are for politics and politicians. The principle must stand the judgment of God.
Boris Johnson has paid tribute to Christians in Ukraine during his Easter Sunday address. His comments come as the Ministry of Defence says Russia's ultimate objective remains the same, despite shifting its operational focus to eastern Ukraine. Yesterday, the Prime Minister was among several senior British politicians banned from entering Russia by the Kremlin. And officials in South Africa say at least 443 people have died in flooding in the country. Heavy rains have damaged roads, homes and electricity supplies in the KwaZulu-Natal province. Thousands of people have also been left homeless. The government says rebuilding the infrastructure will cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, on TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Back to Nana in just a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
If you just tuned in, it's fast approaching 39 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. So back to our Great British debate this hour. I'm asking, should civil servants interfere with government policy? The government's decisions to send some asylum seekers in the UK to Rwanda hasn't gone down well with some of the employees at the Home Office. Unions are warning of mass walkouts from civil servants who oppose the policy of legal or ethical grounds, with the suggestions that the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, could see mass walkouts, requests for transfers or people leaving the service entirely. So I'm asking, should civil servants actually interfere with government policy? Now, before we get to my panel, let's have a quick look at what you've already been saying. Adrian says that I thought it was the civil servant's job to put into action government policy and make sure it works. Yes, you would be right there. Stephen says experience should override ideology or zeal. There is the problem that sometimes the ideology exists within civil servants, but on balance, I expect them to be more sane and pragmatic. Andrew says that they are there to do as they are told, not the other way round. Do your job or lose it. Thank you for that. Keep them coming. Right, so what do you think? Let's see what my panel think. I'm with Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson and also broadcaster Dee Kelly. Right, Danny, we'll start with you this time. Civil servants, I mean, their role, they are supposed to be politically neutral. The Home Civil Service is politically neutral, has the function of impartiality, implementing the policy programme of the elected government. So what do you take?
The dog should wag the tail. The tail shouldn't wag the dog. And I thought it was problematic getting legislation through the House of Lords. Now, apparently, you've got to get it through the Home Office. I think if it sets a terribly dangerous precedent if there's a walkout on moral grounds, quote unquote, and that's very subjective. I get potentially the opposition on financial grounds, but that's just an opinion of the top guy at the Home Office. He doesn't know long term whether it's going to be cheaper or more expensive. What worries me is that there seems to be a hardcore at the Home Office who morally find this unpalatable, and if there is a walkout, you've just got to get rid of them and replace them. I don't think Priti Patel should in any way bend or be malleable with this. You know, she's had to unilaterally say, look, OK, well, you haven't supported me, so I'm just going to do it anyway. That's my understanding of the situation. But if there is a walkout, then what else are they going to walk out about?
Yeah.
I mean, it does set a precedent here. They should implement the government policies, whether they like it or not. You know, these asylum seekers, illegal refugees, whatever you want to call them, we're not sending them to a death camp in Poland. We're sending them to a safe country to be processed. Now, we can have a debate about whether we should process them. I get the deterrent bit, and I'm all behind the deterrent, by the way. But I think that, you know, if we are being led by a hardcore of people who object to government policy, then that sets a terribly dangerous precedent.
Well, what would you say then, Calvin? Because Frank pointed out that they may even act in a way that they kind of be lethargic about doing the job, so therefore might make it difficult for the policy to actually come to fruition or to be successful in its implementation. What's your view on this?
I want them to walk out. I think it would be fantastic if they walk out, because then we'd be rid of them. We can hire new people. Priti Patel has had this all the way through her career, in that they've always blocked her, always prevented her from getting on with the job. She wants to solve the immigration crisis, and they don't want it to happen. Now, they are there to suggest, but most importantly, to implement policy. They're not there to block it or say, we don't agree with this. And the person before said, you know, they weren't clear that it'd be value for money. OK, but it's not all about value for money.
No.
But it's not just about that. They're using the value for money argument as a mechanism to oppose something that they don't like, and they're supposed to be apolitical. Now, if they can't deliver what the government wants them to do, they should go, because it's not about them delivering things the government wants as long as they agree with them. It's about delivering what the government wants. We vote for a government. The civil service implements what that government strategies, what they want to implement. It's not up to them to sit there and say, I don't think that's liberal enough for me. They've got it all wrong.
Well, some of them have been there for successive years and years and seen off successive governments, and it's probably there's probably a reason why we've had so many Home Secretaries, because they potentially would have seen them off, which is not great at all. And actually, the immigration department and the immigration in this country and the whole is a mess.
Well, it has been for decades, and if we look at it, all the people that are upset about this Rwanda policy are the right people. So maybe this policy finally could fix this situation we've been in for decades and decades of pretty much having open borders, even though the vast majority of the voting public say this is one of their top 3 issues. They want the immigration crisis sorted, and governments after government have not been able to do it. Now we've finally got a policy that looks like it could work, and everyone's kicking off, from the Archbishop of York and to Canterbury to the civil servants in the Home Office. If they're all upset about it, I'm happy about it.
I think the top guy who refused to rubber stamp it, I think he should go.
Of course he should.
Well,
I think he should go, because if he's refusing to rubber stamp it and Priti Patel's had to unilaterally order some unique directive or something, then she doesn't have the support of her subordinates. and her closest subordinate at the top of that hierarchical structure won't follow through with what she wants him to do so. I promise you, I get the business side of things. Maybe he objected to, look, Mrs. Patel, I don't think it's good for business because of X, Y, and Z. OK, and that's his opinion.
Yeah, then she said, well, OK, I'm still going to go ahead with it. So
that's
she's
correct.
taking responsibility.
That's correct, but she shouldn't have to do that. She should say, I've listened to what you've said, and I want you to go ahead with it.
Okay.
Well, but David gave us the impression that that's what would be happening, that there wasn't a proper sort of objection, and he was sort of saying that they're not making a stand against it. But I didn't sort of agree with because my definition of making a stand on it was different to his.
Well, we've seen it before, don't forget. Let's not forget that they tried to manipulate her out of office by calling her a bully, and one of the civil servants stepped down and held a press conference, which is something civil servants shouldn't do in the first place.
Well, let's see what you think at home, because this show's nothing without your views. Let's welcome our great British voice. This is your opportunity to join us and tell us what you really think about the topics. And today we're going to London. Chris Davis is there. Hello, Chris. Chris, so what do you think?
Nana and guys.
Hello. Chris, what do you think? Civil servants interfering with government policy. What's your view?
Well, I think when it's a policy that they agree with, like the Homes for Ukraine scheme, they seem to get in their own way. Priti Patel and the Home Office is oil and water. I think it's actually one for your difficult conversations. People need to respect the position of Home Secretary, regardless of who that is and what their politics are. And every day we do nothing, the people traffickers win, and it costs the United Kingdom citizens £5 million. Now, if civil servants worked in the private sector and decided to down tools, they'd be dismissed for gross misconduct. I don't see the difference between the two, to be honest. The UK has always shown willingness to take asylum seekers with relish. Look at Hong Kong, Afghanistan and Ukraine this year alone. Civil servants, yes, are meant to be politically impartial, and if they can't be, they have to leave their roles. Just to expand slightly, Nana, because you spoke about the church. The UNHCR are quite happy for asylum seekers to go to Rwanda unless they've arrived in the UK. I've seen flights with people on them. The Archbishops of Canterbury and York are not pursuing a spiritual agenda, it's a globalist one. And along with Calvin's ordination, they've got this completely wrong. When the majority of people that vote Labour in a Savanta Conres poll say they support the policy, you know the policy is right. Now, Dominic Cummings may be a pariah, Calvin mentioned him earlier on, but he was right about the civil service. It needs pruning. Let's take the opportunity to do it. If they don't want to work, leave.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, thank you so much for that. That's Chris Davis, a GBNews voice. And of course, the UNHCR is actually the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Right, let's see. Today I've been asking, should civil servants interfere with government policy? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Fanny says, no. If you're not prepared to do your job, you should resign or be sacked. Billy says it's not interfering, it's advising and mending. It's their job. You know what they get paid to do. I don't think is it their job? We've voted a government for that. They're supposed to be the paid servants of the government.
That's a civil servant. Right?
Possibly. Wanda says, forget interference. What about working from home? That is a good point, yes. They should get back into the office and do what they're paid to do. Ronnie says a lot of people think this policy won't even happen because it'll get stopped in the courts. Civil servants should not be forced by their bosses to break the law. Well, thank you for that, but they're not forced. They can always leave. Look, if your boss tells you to do something that you don't really want to do, even though you've been kind of tasked to do that job, if you don't like it, that's the deal. Well, there's a poll up on Twitter today throughout the show asking whether civil servants should be interfering with government policy. And currently, what percentage do you think said yes?
Well, I actually saw a 9 there,
but
so I'm going with 9.
It's 9%.
And 91% said no.
Yes,
what are you going for, Calv?
I think you've got it right. I think you hit the nail on the head with that one, buddy.
Well, so 9% of you say yes, actually, they should interfere, and 91% of you say no. Right, well, on the plans, the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, said this. There is no question now that the model we have put forward, I'm convinced, is world-class and a world first. And it will be used as a blueprint going forward. There's no doubt about that. Priti Patel said, I would not be surprised if other countries start coming to us direct on the back of this as well. Right, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll get the latest from Ukraine in Worldview. I'll be joined by Keir Giles from Chatham House to discuss the tense situation in Mariupol, as Russia says it will spare the lives of Ukrainian soldiers if they lay down their arms. First, let's get some weather.
And the UK is looking dry in the east, but rain will continue edging into the west. Let's take a look at the details. After a mainly dry day, showery outbreaks of rain will steadily move eastwards across the southwest of England later this afternoon and into the evening on a freshening southwesterly breeze. The southeast will end Easter Sunday on a dry note. Sunshine will turn hazy through the afternoon as high cloud spreads in from the west. Outbreaks of showery rain will also be edging eastwards across Wales into the evening. These could be heavy at times, especially in the west. It'll be a dry, bright and warm end to the day for the Midlands. It'll turn cloudier through the afternoon and into the evening, but remain dry until after sunset. The northeast of England will also have a dry and bright end to Easter Sunday with some sunny spells. Cloud will increase here from the west through the afternoon with rain expected overnight. Rain in the west of Scotland will slowly start to edge eastwards into the evening. After a warm and sunny day in the east, cloud will increase ahead of the rain. Rain, which has persisted for most of the day over Northern Ireland, will gradually clear this afternoon with sunny spells and showers following from the west. It'll feel fresher too. Tomorrow, rain in the west will steadily move across the UK overnight, clearing all but the far east coast by tomorrow morning. And that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
I'm Liam Halligan. Join me every weekday at 1 p.m. for On the Money, your daily dose of economics, business and consumer news. I got 25 years experience covering economics and finance. We hold grown-up discussions with a host of experts who really know their stuff. We can't buy gas and store it. That was a mistake, wasn't it?
I think it was a mistake.
Even you, Liam, don't have a crystal ball.
Inflation's a real threat.
Every weekday at 1, you're On the Money.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now at 5 o'clock for Outside this week, I'll be joined by the SAS veteran, author and champion of the Army Cadets, Phil Campion. Now he's just released a brand new book called Who Dares Wins. I can't wait to find out more about what it's like to be in the SAS. We'll talk highs, lows, lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. But first, it's time for Worldview, and this is the part of the show where we look at what's happening or what's making the headlines around the world. And today, we'll absolutely be focusing on the invasion of Ukraine, as Russia says that it will actually spare the lives of Ukrainian soldiers if they lay down their arms, but their retreats could push the chance of peace further away. as the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that eliminating Ukrainian fighters in Mariupol will put an end to talks. Can the Russians be trusted on that? I mean, they weren't that great with the peace corridors. I'm joined now by the Senior Consulting Fellow for the Russian and Eurasia Programme at Chatham House, Keir Giles. Now, Keir, thank you for joining me. What do you think of the calls for surrender of the troops in Ukraine by the Russians? Do you think this is genuine?
I think you've hit the nail on the head just now. The Ukrainians have no reason to trust Russian assurances that their lives will be spared, because after all, we've seen so many instances where Russia promises a ceasefire or the so-called humanitarian corridors, and it turns out to be a trap. Plus, of course, Russia itself has promised that it will deal unsparingly with any of those defenders. So the choice that is actually facing those people who are holed up in Mariupol fighting off the Russian attacks is a very stark one, and it's not surprising that they are fighting till the very end. We've seen forecasts for the last couple of weeks that they only had a few days left. There's an American think tank called the Institute for the Study of War that's been putting out very detailed and it seems accurate assessments of the daily situation in Ukraine. And they have been saying it's only a matter of a couple of days now for several weeks. So it is quite astonishing the feat of arms that we're seeing actually within Mariupol by this group of Ukrainian Marines and border guards that are fighting off these Russian attacks. For those people who know their British military history, I think this is going to be comparable with the Arnhem bridgehead holding out for far longer than seemed militarily possible.
And of course, the Russians aren't known for telling the truth. I mean, obviously, there was the Moskva, which they claimed sunk or had issues. But actually, it turns out that because of the retaliation in Ukraine, that they're actually obviously admitting that it was probably bombed. What do we know further about that? Because they're claiming there are survivors there.
Yes, that's another very murky story. First of all, Russian propagandists had to tie themselves in knots by saying both at the same time that the Moskva sinking was nothing to do with Ukrainian missiles, which is not a good look anyway if it just spontaneously catches fire and then sinks, but at the same time that they had to take revenge on Kiev for sinking it. So it's one of those situations where Russia can run two completely and contradictory stories at the same time without any apparent embarrassment. But also, we have to look at the way that Russia is actually watching the progress of this war and its failure to achieve its objectives. And that also is giving the propagandists a bit of a problem. Because now that they've already reinvented their war aims, they may not be aiming to conquer the whole of Ukraine, just a small piece of eastern Ukraine. Even that's being rolled back from by some of the state TV, the state media outlets, saying that even less than that would be acceptable and Russia really should limit its aspirations for what it can achieve in Ukraine.
And what about the people then of Russia? Do we know much about whether they're getting the message now of how we in the West are seeing this situation?
It's very hard to tell. Opinion polls are close to worthless because, of course, who is going to give the wrong answer in the current situation in Russia? And we do see all of these continued outpourings of support for Russian troops, egging them on to carry out more genocide, more atrocities in Ukraine. But what we don't know is how much of the message is getting through with Russian fatalities, with these casualties, including from the Moskva, the cruiser that sank, as you just mentioned. We don't know what the actual numbers are, but eventually people in Russia will find out. And of course, they have means of communicating with each other and comparing notes on how many people have died that Russian populations never have done before. In all of these wars that Russia has launched, Russia has known that it needs to control that communication between the relatives of families in order that the true scale of the fatalities doesn't come out. That's going to be very much harder to do in an age of social media.
Yeah, it is. And finally, are we further from peace than ever? The Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky earlier said eliminating Ukrainian fighters in Mariupol would actually put an end to peace talks. So in your view?
We could be further and we could be closer because on the one hand, yes, that's a sign of Ukrainian confidence that they're happy to walk away from peace talks and put that as an ultimatum. But also we're hearing from a lot of people in the West that the 9th of May, which is Russian Victory Day, has been set as a deadline for Russia declaring victory. Now, what that does mean is that Russia can once again say that it wanted something totally different from the war, then say it has achieved it, in order that it could declare victory and then step away from the fighting. So it may be that we're actually closer than we were before.
They put a date on it. Well, listen, Keir, thank you so much for talking to us. That's Keir Giles. He's the Senior Consulting Fellow at the Russia and Eurasia Programme at Chatham House. Thank you so much. That is your Ukraine update. Now, earlier for the Great British Debate this hour, I was asking, should civil servants interfere with government policy? And as ever, lots of you have come in with your views. Dan says, unfortunately, you only have to see historic episodes of Yes Minister or Yes Prime Minister to see how the Mandarins work. Far too much power and no real accountability. Paul says, I will join the Home Office as these employees leave. And Ivan says this policy is bonkers, and I don't blame civil servants for wanting to walk out. I think it's a bit harsh for them to be bashed all the time when they worked very hard through the pandemic, and we should appreciate what they do. What do you mean? They worked from home, and, well, they may have worked hard, but I think everybody did, didn't they? I mean, most people did. Paul said there should be a purge of unhelpful servants and employment of good people that will do their job. And I do love this one. I did get a great message here from a guy called John who said that the Home Office should actually be called the Stay-at-Home Office. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. More to come in the next hour. It's 5 o'clock, and for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics hitting the headlines right now. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 5 o'clock. I'm Miranda Shunker in the GB newsroom. Nicola Sturgeon has been reported to police after footage appears to show her breaching Scotland's COVID face covering laws while out campaigning. An unverified video posted on social media apparently shows the First Minister not wearing a mask during a visit to a barber's in South Lanarkshire yesterday. A spokesman for the SNP said Miss Sturgeon entered the shop without a mask before putting one on. Police Scotland confirmed they've received a complaint which is currently being assessed. The Archbishop of York says Home Office plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda are depressing and distressing. It's after the leader of the Church of England, Justin Welby, said the proposals raised serious ethical questions. The government argues the deal with the East African nation will stem the flow of migrants unlawfully crossing the Channel. But in his Easter sermon at Canterbury Cathedral, the Archbishop of Canterbury said the Home Office plans are the opposite of the nature of God.
This season is also why there are such serious ethical questions about sending asylum seekers overseas. The details are for politics and politicians. The principle must stand the judgment of God, and it cannot.
Well, a spokeswoman for the Rwandan government, Yolan Makolo, told GB News she hopes more countries will copy the UK.
Migration should be looked at differently. People should be offered opportunities to live dignified lives wherever they are in the world, and we hope more countries will join up. Rwanda in 2019 was the first one to host refugees from migrants from Libya, endangered from Libya. We have over 700 of them who've passed through here. We hope that this new innovative model will also be emulated by other countries. Then we can do more together.
Boris Johnson has paid tribute to Christians in Ukraine during his Easter Sunday address. His comments come as the Ministry of Defence said Russia's ultimate objective remains the same, despite shifting its operational focus to eastern Ukraine. Yesterday, the Prime Minister was among several senior British politicians banned from entering Russia by the Kremlin. Speaking partly in Ukrainian, Mr. Johnson urged those in the country to be strong and have courage in your heart.
Those around the world facing fear of persecution, forced to celebrate their Saviour's rebirth in secret, and of course, the Christians of Ukraine, whether they're marking Easter today or its Orthodox equivalent later this month, for whom Christ's message of hope, the triumph of life over death and good over evil, will resonate this year perhaps more than any other. Будьте сильны и майте в сердце odvahu. Вisi, что вповайте на Господа.
Well, Ukrainian soldiers have appeared to defy a Russian ultimatum to surrender in the besieged city of Mariupol. Moscow claims the steelworks is now the only area of the city not under its control. Elsewhere in the country, at least 2 people have been killed and 4 injured this morning as shelling hit the eastern town of Zolote. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine's defence of Mariupol continues despite Russia's attacks.
The situation is certainly not improving on a daily basis. Our military is blocked, and with them, the wounded people are blocked. There are many dead. Unfortunately, there is a humanitarian catastrophe with shortage of food, water, and no medications. However, the guys defend heroically. We're grateful to them for that. To be honest, there is no trust in the Russian negotiators about Mariupol.
To South Africa now, where officials say at least 443 people have died in flooding in the country. Heavy rains have damaged roads, homes and electricity supplies in the KwaZulu-Natal province. Thousands of people have also been left homeless. The government says rebuilding the infrastructure will cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And 2 people have died and at least 11 people have been injured after being shot at a party in the US. A warning to those watching on TV, the following clip contains flashing images. Authorities in the city of Pittsburgh say the shooting happened shortly after midnight at a rental property where nearly 200 people had gathered for a party. The city's public safety department says investigations are ongoing. Well, you're up to date. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Nana.
So good afternoon. It's just fast approaching 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. And this show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster Dee Kelly and Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson. So still to come in a few moments' time, it's time for Outside, which is the part of the show where I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. And today, in the studio with me, it's the SAS veteran, author and champion of the Army Cadets, Phil Campion, who's just released a brand new book called Who Dares Wins. Excuse me. The Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should we build more council houses? The Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove is to slap property developers with a new levy that could lead to a wide-scale expansion of council houses. He's going to scrap the requirement for companies to build affordable homes and instead get them to pay into an infrastructure development fund to be used by councils. So should we build more? And I have the exclusive, our very own Calvin Robinson is here, hot off the press. He's in the Sunday Express today. He's claiming bishops in the Church of England are blocking his attempt to become a priest. Find out why. Email your thoughts, gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. Right, so let's start with Outside. And this week, I'm speaking to someone who's fought in war zones across the globe. Phil Campion joined the armed forces at 16 and worked his way to earn a place in the UK's elite fighting force, the SAS. Now, since leaving the army, he's worked as a private military contractor, written about his experiences, and works as a champion for the Army Cadets. He's also just released a brand new book about his life, which focuses on his difficult upbringing, the aptly titled Who Dares Wins. And I'm pleased to say Phil joins me in the studio now. Phil, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me. Right, so, I mean, first of all, you've had quite a difficult sort of upbringing. Tell us a bit about yourself, because some people may have seen you on things or read things about you, but they might not have known.
Yeah, so aside the Who Dares Wins, the macho image and all that sort of stuff, there's a different bloke underneath there. Do you know what I mean? I have this persona, do you know what I mean? It's almost like Liam Gallagher of Oasis. He's out there, he's always on the... And then when he goes home, he's a different man, do you know what I mean?
Soft and cuddly.
And the same thing here. I think, you know, this book in particular was brought about by I was at an after dinner, I was speaking, and the speaker before me was talking about, it was for the NHS, for people that foster and adopt children, and he was speaking about how this lad had been interfered with, how he'd been groomed and all this sort of stuff, and how if they could identify and have other people's experiences, they would find it easier to identify the perpetrators and maybe do something about it. And I sat there with my script thinking, that has happened to me. It's 50 years ago, but that happened to me. Do you know what I mean? I got groomed in a children's home, the Church of England Children's Society home, and I got groomed in there. And it took me a long, long time before I realised I was going to speak about it. I hadn't even spoken to my wife about it. And literally, as I had my speech ready to go on this thing, I put it in the bin, and I walked up and I told them exactly what happened to me. And then after I did that, I thought, look, if I can get this down on paper, maybe it will genuinely help. Not just them find the perpetrators, but other young people who are going through difficult times to go, hey, this geezer's done loads of stuff here. He's done some really cool stuff. He's been with the stars, he's been on television, he's been in the army, he's done this, that and the other. And I've got a problem. And I don't feel I can talk about it, but he did. So why can't I? Because if I'd have spoken about it years ago, some of the scrapes that I did get in, I'm not going to shoulder sort of like try and offload it onto them, but I might have had an easier ride in some respects, do you know what I mean? So, yeah, it was a hallelujah moment, but I thought, no, I've got to speak about that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so your book, does it talk about what happened to you?
Yes, yeah, it lists categorically exactly what happened to me. You know, the guy was head of the education unit in the children's home. He obviously picked upon me, vulnerable, always in trouble, you know, and before you knew it, he was doing some extremely strange things, and I'm like, oh, what's going on here? And he's going, well, no one's ever going to listen to you. Because you're the trouble boy here. You're the trouble boy. You better do what you're told because you're going to make things worse for yourself. You know, and eventually you just got to sort of like, roll with it. And I never spoke about it for the whole of my life. But it was like, oh, this is awful.
Yeah, and now you've spoken about it, is there a sense of relief and actually a sense that you can help others?
I swear now, as I came out of that building that night, I literally, Wendy's out there, I got on the phone to Wendy and I'm like, whoa, and I just broke down on the thing. I was like, it's all gone. It's all gone. It was like taking 10 kilos of spuds off the top of my head like that I've been carrying around all my life. It was like, boom, they're gone. I was like, wow, this is insane. And I just realised that, you know, perhaps, even now, talking about it, I think the people are going to look at you and go, you making excuses, son, here? No. Do you know what I mean? Even now, I think they're going to do that to me, you know? Now, I can't blame everything on it. I was a little brat, as they call you sometimes, as a kid, do you know what I mean? And I was as naughty as the next guy. But I wasn't nasty, I wasn't horrible, and I didn't deserve that. Well, and I should have been able to be in a position where I felt I could talk about it. Yeah. And that's what I want from this book. I want people to realise that no matter what your trials and tribulations are, however your mental health is, whatever you perceive other things to be, don't forget, you can always talk to somebody about it.
And nothing can justify anyone treating you in
that way. No, absolutely not. No.
It's totally unacceptable.
No.
On every level. So do you think that experience and your upbringing was one of the reasons why you went to sort of get yourself involved with the army and fighting?
Yeah, I got a job as a ski instructor. Now, this same guy helped me get this job on the YTS as a ski instructor, so he was still tipping up periodically. When the manager of this place I was working, he was an ex-admiral in the Navy, he said, "Why have you thought about the Army?" And I had thought about the Army, and then I thought, hang on a minute, you can't follow me there. So literally, I joined the Army, and I joined as quick as I could. I was like, I'm out of here, I'm going, do you know what I mean? And I literally joined and flashed a bang. I was in the Army within about 3 or 4 months of having the conversation with this guy, and I went. And I don't look back on it. I think it was the right place for me. I left school with no qualifications. I had a cycle proficiency. I took that twice. All right, so I wasn't doing particularly well. There wasn't many doors open to me. There was a massive door open that said you can get in as much trouble as you like, but that's going to end in one place, isn't it? And so, you know, I literally had a word with myself and said, right, sort yourself out, Phil, get yourself out there and get yourself in the Army.
Now, obviously, it really suited you because you ended up in the SAS. How do you go from the Army to the SAS? What's the deal?
It's a volunteer. The SAS is a totally volunteer thing. You know, I enjoyed what I did. I had a little bit of exposure. I'd seen some of the stuff that they did. And so eventually I volunteered. I took on the selection process, passed the selection process and became a member of a badge, you know, badge for D Squadron.
So what's the selection process like? What do you have
to do? It's tough.
Yeah.
It's a tough selection process. It's designed to weed out people that don't want to be there, okay? Because a force like the SAS needs people that want to be there, not people that sort of like think they want to be there, because you will get caught out eventually, okay? So it is designed to break you down. It is designed to make you, you know, really want to push yourself to the limits. But it's not impossible. And that's another thing I say to lots of young people. Nothing's impossible in this life. But people will tell you it is. Other people break your dreams. You've got to try and keep them alive in your own head.
Well, they project their insecurity onto you, don't they?
Look, I always say to young lads, because I've got asked by lots of young soldiers, you know, what about SAS, what about this, what about that, what about the other? And I say to them, go for it. just go for it. Because the only person who's ever going to tell you not to is someone who's failed.
Yeah.
Oh, it's impossible, mate. Oh, I'll tell you what, they put a house on me back. No, I passed it.
So give us. So you talked about house on your back. Obviously, you didn't do that, but give us some of the things that you had to do.
There's some long forced route marches. There's a lot of time spent in the jungle where it's close, it's tight, it's you've got to perform. It's wet, it's dry. It's there's some formidable tasks that take place. About I can't really go into the whole process, but it's a 6 to 8 month process. Which if you don't want to be there and if you're not prepared properly for it, mentally and physically, you ain't going to be there at the end, right? You're going to be going home.
And you got through it, and you were known for taking part in certain operations like Operation Barras, which
I was in Operation Barras,
sudden death or certain death. What's that? What is that?
I mean, that was the rescue of the Royal Irish, who got themselves pinched by the West Side Boys in Sierra Leone. A particularly dangerous operation, but like I say, without going into too much detail about it, we went in, we did our job, we came back out again. Unfortunately, we did lose one there. We lost 2 en route.
So you had to get it to Sierra Leone and get somebody out of there.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's not an easy job. It's not.
Wow.
It's not the given, is it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's certainly not the given that these people, every time they deploy, they're going to come home either.
And presumably,
that's
when you can't really talk about those things after.
No, not massively. No, I mean, there's no secret I was there. It's been 2 or 3 publications, but to go into the specifics would be crossing a couple of lines that maybe I don't want to.
Yeah, you can't say that in the book either. You can't.
No, there's nothing in there in the book.
Yeah.
No. It can intimate all you like, but that is. I mean, there is some cracking stuff in the book. There is a bit of daring do, and I wanted people, not only from my first book, Born Fearless, but through this one, to see that the sort of stuff that I've achieved. Okay, but this one in particular said you can achieve that and still have a little bit. You can do wrong as well. I've been remanded in custody, that sort of stuff. I've been in trouble. I've had this and that and the other. And in times where I've been really low, really down, it's been my own mental attitude that's pulled me through. Nobody else. And those conversations have to start with yourself. People say you're mad if you talk to yourself. I'll say you're mad if you don't. Have a look in the mirror. Have a look at that person in that mirror, because that's the only person you can't tell a lie to.
Say that. I spend hours talking to myself in the mirror. I'm the most interesting person I know.
Absolutely. I'm the only that person in the mirror is the only person as well. I can't tell a lie to. He knows me, and I know him. Do you know what I mean? So I found that a good route to finding, to getting me talking to other people. Acknowledge what you've got yourself. Acknowledge your own problems, and then you can go and talk to other people about it. Because if you just put your head in the sand, you'll never get there.
Now, when you left the army, you became a private military contractor.
Yeah.
That must have felt like a bit of from doing SAS and everything else like that.
It wasn't, but it became, it was the second best. I won't lie to you, it was second best, you know what I mean? To be fair, I'd have liked to have been a footballer for England, but I wasn't any good. Do you know what I mean?
That would be a problem.
So, that was the problem there, so I had to run with what I had. I had to run with the skills I had.
Yeah.
I came out of the SAS with some great skill sets, which were deployable and which, moreover, could make me a little bit of dough.
Why did you leave, though, the SAS?
I had a falling out with a couple of my superiors, and I bought my way out in the end. I PVR'd, I got out. I was very headstrong. I wish I could have gone a little bit further sometimes, but then it's no point dwelling back there, is it?
No.
I've been a massively roller coaster in my life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And you said you're a volunteer at the SAS, so they don't get paid to do the job.
No. Volunteer as in you have to volunteer to go on selection. Of course, you get paid.
I was going to say, and I can imagine it pays really well though, because you're.
I think nowadays it pays a little bit better than probably did in my day. But no, it's very important to realise that the soldiers there are volunteers. Press gang men don't perform like people who actually want to be there, and that's that's the point in mentioning the fact that they're volunteers.
It sounds a bit James Bondy territory. Was it like that a bit?
No, I don't think so.
Really? No, nothing like that. No. So you're so now talk to me about what you've been doing since you left all of that.
So the private military contracting, Wendy put a nip in the bud for that. Do you know what I mean? I'm running away every 5 minutes. As it says in the book, I got put in a container in Togo. I got locked up. I got told I was a mercenary. I was going to get shot. All this sort of stuff. It all has a toll. And so, having written my first book, Born Fearless, it had been a Times bestseller, and I decided to see if I couldn't go do something in the media. So I did, but unfortunately my first task was straight out of Syria, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean? To go and make Big Phil's war. So it was out of the frying pan into the fire. And actually, I probably got closer to any action in Syria than what I did for a very long time before that. So, yeah, it was cool. But then, one thing led to another, and I started doing more media bits and pieces and what have you. And, nowadays, I've got my radio station up and running. We run a few bits and pieces there, which is great fun. And I'm sort of like just muddling my way through this media world, which is not the easiest.
And your book, of course, is out this week.
Yeah, this is out. I think it's out now, I think. So there you go. Which camera are we? That one over there. That'll do, won't it? There you go. Shamelessly plugging me book. All right. Okay, it's out in paperback this week. Various outlets, Amazon. I think there's some airport copies kicking about somewhere. And obviously the big ones, the Waterstones and all that sort of stuff, they'll have it.
Of course. Well, listen, it's an incredible, I mean, your journey has been incredible, and obviously it's still going, and you've probably got a lot more to achieve. If you had a pearl of wisdom that you could pass on to somebody, the one thing or something that keeps you going, what would that be?
Never ever give up. Never listen to the naysayers. Just keep going, keep plodding. Keep plodding, keep going, just keep going. It'll happen for you eventually, you know what I mean? But it won't happen for you if you give up. That's the golden rule. If you give up, it'll never happen. Just keep going, keep going. Set your sights high, never set them low. If you set them low, you'll hit the dirt. If you set them high, well, you're going that way, aren't you? You know what I mean? You might just hit the top.
Well,
you never know.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you. Thank you so much for that.
All right.
That is, of course, Phil Campion. He's a former SAS soldier and author of Who Dares Wins. His book is out. Right, well, coming up, it's the Great British Debate. And for this hour, I'm asking, should we build more council houses? Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove is planning to put a new levy on developers that could lead to an expansion of council housing. Only 3,370 local authority properties were built in the UK in 2019 to 2020. That's down from almost 195,000 in 1969. So should we build more? First, let's get some weather.
And the UK is looking dry in the east, but rain will continue edging into the west. Let's take a look at the details. After a mainly dry day, showery outbreaks of rain will steadily move eastwards across the southwest of England later this afternoon and into the evening on a freshening southwesterly breeze. The southeast will end Easter Sunday on a dry note. Sunshine will turn hazy through the afternoon as high cloud spreads in from the west. Outbreaks of showery rain will also be edging eastwards across Wales into the evening. These could be heavy at times, especially in the west. It'll be a dry, bright and warm end to the day for the Midlands. It'll turn cloudier through the afternoon and into the evening, but remain dry until after sunset. The northeast of England will also have a dry and bright end to Easter Sunday with some sunny spells. Cloud will increase here from the west through the afternoon with rain expected overnight. Rain in the west of Scotland will slowly start to edge eastwards into the evening. After a warm and sunny day in the east, cloud will increase ahead of the rain. Rain, which has persisted for most of the day over Northern Ireland, will gradually clear this afternoon with sunny spells and showers following from the west. It'll feel fresher too. Tomorrow, rain in the west will steadily move across the UK overnight, clearing all but the far east coast by tomorrow morning. And that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Coming up today at 6 p.m.
Welcome to a very special GB News Easter programme. We are invited during this short time to enter into the passion, death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. It's an invitation to take part in the most important part of the Christian life. Happy Easter. Alleluia.
The meaning of Easter with Calvin Robinson today at 6 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's coming up to 24 minutes after 5 o'clock. And of course, I am still with my fabulous panel, Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson and also broadcaster Dee Kelly. Right, so it is time for the Great British Debate. And this hour, I'm asking, should we build more council houses? The Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove is set to put a new levy on property developers that could lead to a rapid expansion of social housing as he looks to support families struggling with the cost of living crisis. Companies will no longer have to build affordable homes, and instead they'll have to pay into an infrastructure fund which can be used by councils to fund housing projects. Now, council housing boomed in the post-war years before a massive sell-off under Mrs Thatcher and her right to buy scheme. Only now 3,370 local authority properties were built in the year 2019 to 20, so sort of the year before last. That's down from almost 195,000 in 1969 to 1970. So I'm asking, should we build more? I'm joined now by Dee Kelly. She's the star of Benefit Streets, I remember that, and co-founder of Birmingham Says No to Knife Crime and Youth Violence. Dee, first of all, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Happy Easter. Happy Easter to you.
And to you too, and to you too.
Thank you very much. Now, listen, what do you think then? Do we need to sort of make it more common and normal to live in social housing?
I'm of the mindset that most definitely. What we're sort of seeing at the moment is a drastic shortage of council properties and social accommodation for many vulnerable families. And that's just what we're seeing in Birmingham. Families are being crippled by private landlords. We've got people in temporary accommodation that have taken over the half of the hotel system, whole families in one room. We've got people bidding on properties. And the problem is, they're not the only person bidding on properties. You can bid and not your number 257th. We definitely, urgently need more social accommodation for families up and down the country.
Because, I mean, and obviously what you described, a lot of people probably don't realise that actually the government are paying for people to live in things like hotels, and hotels are being sort of commandeered by families when actually more council housing might help with that. Now, you've had experience of living in a council house. How vital was that to you and your upbringing? And obviously you're a celebrity now. I mean, do you still live in your sort of council area?
I obviously we were born and bred in Birmingham and grew up obviously, you know, in what was then a housing association house, and it was kind of everything was fine. I had an amazing childhood, and then with regards to sort of when I had my children, my first home was a housing, you know, a city council home, and it's sort of like back then it was everything was affordable. But nowadays, it's kind of. I'm still in Birmingham. I'll never leave from Birmingham. I'm only a few minutes down the road from what was, you know, the infamous James Turner Street. It's kind of, I don't know, the price of everything and the cost of everything has risen so drastically, and people are really struggling. We've got people in you know, private rented accommodation, and the rents are absolutely extortionate. The council properties, they are that bit cheaper, and you know, the reality of it is, if you're in a council property, you might be able to afford to live a little bit easier.
It was a mistake then for Margaret Thatcher when she allowed people to buy their council houses in the 80s.
So sort of thinking back to that as well, it was kind of, I suppose in a way it worked for many, and then it kind of didn't work for the others. Because again, you know, you'd have the stigma about people being in a council property back then was it was only people on benefits, when the reality of it wasn't. So, you know, credit if they could afford to buy their property at that time, then, you know, good luck to them and well done. But again, you still had a lot of people who couldn't, but they were still in affordable accommodation.
What's your view on that, then, affordable housing? Because before and currently, developers will build a nice development and then they'll put some affordable housing on the end of it, which sometimes doesn't work out well because there's a different culture between those who've paid, you know, the same amount of money for a very similar property. There becomes a sort of weird sort of balance. What's your view on that? Because that's kind of what would end, and the government might end up building council houses.
See, my view is that everybody should be entitled to live in a property, no matter what their situation. And again, it's kind of like with what you've just said. You know, why shouldn't somebody who is working class and all right, they haven't bought the property, why are they not entitled to live in an estate that's just been built? This is what's, you know, what's so wrong with society at the moment. They're still trying to separate the classes. And it's like, you know, sometimes, you know, it does work, and it works more, you know, fingers crossed it'll work more than it doesn't.
Well, where I used to live, it had that, and there was a divide in a sense, which there was no real reason why there should be, but there was a definite divide when it came to that. The developer built some for those of us who sort of paid the full price, and they had some affordable stuff, and it didn't really work out that well. But Dee, thank you so much for talking to me. That's Dee Kelly. She's the co-founder of Birmingham Says No to Knife Crime and Youth Violence, and she's also the staff on Benefit Street. Take care, Dee. Thank you very much. Right, so I'm asking, should we build more council houses? Let's see what you've been saying. Johnny says yes, but with the understanding that they remain the property of the state. Tricia says, best scheme I ever heard of is to build a load of houses which can only be sold out at build cost. When you've sold them, you build some more with the cash raised. That way people can own their own homes and can move on easily when they're able at minimal cost to the state. Oh, I see what you mean. So not council houses, as it were. I hear you. Chrissy says, yes, they should never have been sold off. Well, see, on the other side, they're saying that the build ones are quite like that. Cab says, I've given up with the property market in the UK. Just get me to Rwanda. Oh, thank you so much for that. Right, so it's coming up to 31 minutes after 5 o'clock. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. On the way, we'll continue with our Great British Debate, and I'm asking, should we build more council houses? Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove is planning to put a new levy on housing developers that could lead to an expansion of council housing. So what do you think? Should we actually be building more of them? You'll hear the thoughts from my panel, broadcaster Dee Kelly and also Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
It's 5:31. I'm Miranda Shunker in the GB newsroom. Police are investigating after an unverified video appears to show Nicola Sturgeon breaching Scotland's COVID laws. The First Minister is seen apparently not wearing a mask during a visit to a barber's in South Lanarkshire yesterday. A spokesman for the SNP says Ms Sturgeon accidentally entered the shop without a face covering before putting one on. Police say they've received a complaint which is currently being assessed. The Archbishop of York says Home Office plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda are depressing and distressing. It's after the leader of the Church of England, Justin Welby, said the proposals raised serious ethical questions. The government argues the deal with the East African nation will stem the flow of migrants unlawfully crossing the Channel. In his Easter sermon, the Archbishop of Canterbury said the Home Office plans are the opposite of the nature of God. Boris Johnson has paid tribute to Christians in Ukraine during his Easter Sunday address. His comments come as the Ministry of Defence says Russia's ultimate objective remains the same, despite shifting its operational focus to eastern Ukraine. Yesterday, the Prime Minister was among several senior British politicians banned from entering Russia by the Kremlin. And officials in South Africa say at least 443 people have died in flooding in the country. Heavy rains have damaged roads, homes and electricity supplies in the KwaZulu-Natal province. Thousands of people have also been left homeless. The government says rebuilding the infrastructure will cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, TV, online and DAB plus radio. This is GB News. We'll be back to Nana after the break.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's just coming up to 36 minutes after 5 o'clock on this wonderful Easter Sunday. Right, so let's get back to our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should we build more council houses? Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove, he's planning to put a new levy on developers so that could lead to an expansion of council housing. Only just over 3,000 local authority properties were built in the UK between 2019 and 20. That is really pretty much down from 195,000 between 1969 to 1970. So with so many of us struggling to get onto the property ladder, I want to ask you whether you think perhaps we should build more council housing. Let's see what my panel think of this one. And as ever, I have the lovely Calvin Robinson and also I have Dee Kelly.
Not lovely, though.
No, I said lovely Calvin, not you.
No, I know.
About you.
Not lovely.
He is lovely.
I know, which makes me not lovely.
Oh, I see.
That's all I was merely doing.
Well, it
I
sounds like
agree,
you were
he's
saying
lovely.
He's not lovely.
He's
Right.
lovely, I agree.
Oh,
but I am not lovely.
No, you are.
Doesn't make me unlovely,
My mother
though.
thinks you're lovely, Danny.
Yeah, we've heard
Well, the pensioner's favourite.
Well, go on then. Could you give my mother...
What's your mum's name?
Dee Kelly. He's so nice. I love Danny.
What's her...
Georgina.
Doesn't she want to slap my bald head?
They all do.
Georgina, you've got a wicked daughter, but I believe you're lovely.
Oh,
Hello.
That's nice. Right, anyway, so let's move on to council housing. And also, what do you think?
It's curious. I was listening to Dee Kelly, and it's great to hear and see her again from the West Midlands. It's curious that show, Benefit Street, actually, the legacy of that show is still reinforcing negative stereotypes about people who are living on the breadline, unfortunately. Now, what she made clear, and it is a problem, and you referenced it as well, is that when you have a new development, there's an area which is segregated and not for sale, and that's the affordable housing. And there's one at the back of my house, and I know for a fact that a lot of people resent the fact that they're going to have to spend £600,000 or £700,000 on a 4-bed detached house, knowing that just over there, the perception is you've got some tow rag living there for free. And people find it, honestly, they resent it. Now, I'm not saying that they're tow rags, but that's a perception of. And Benefit Street doesn't help that, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, but it does. It's a reality of the perception. I mean, it's not.
Well, no,
really. But
tow rag was a perception, not a reality.
No, but what it is it's kind of reinforcing the perception, actually.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I mean, I had the same thing when I moved somewhere. I'd spent hundreds of thousands of pounds, and then just sort of behind me were some who hadn't really spent that sort of money, but living in similar properties. But there did appear to be a divide.
It seems to be unfair.
But it did seem to be as well. Those appeared to be not treating the properties in the way that we who owned them were.
That's correct.
That wasn't great. Kelvin?
I think this is a fantastic idea, and I think Michael Gove is actually a bit of a genius in this area. I've criticised him on a lot of things personally, such as his leadership contest, etc. But I think as a minister, he's probably one of the best we have in the country. You know, he was great on education, probably one of the reasons I became a teacher, great in justice, and now in levelling up and housing, this makes sense, because what Thatcher did right was she made it accessible for people to own homes. And it's one of the most important things the government can do, because everyone needs to own a home. Everyone wants to own a home. Everyone should aspire to own a home. But it's unaffordable right now. So instead of getting all these big corporations to put these affordable housing sections in whenever they're building a new area, he's saying, OK, let's make sure that they all contribute some money to the local council, and the council can build council houses again, because we're not building council houses anywhere anymore. You know, negligible numbers.
The only worry I have about his scheme, whilst it's great that he wants to do this and create a fund that these councils can access, the worry is whether it will actually be earmarked to that, and almost as though the councils will have freedom to spend it on anything. So they may be able to spend it on, say, hospitals and things like that, which I wouldn't object to, but that is the worry. We see how the councils can mismanage, in a sense, money, and how they spend it on ridiculousnesses, you know, that we wouldn't probably agree.
You're almost sort of going backwards, though, just to look at it in a different light, because I think it was Gordon Brown who was a big advocate of affordable housing. So 20% or 25% of all new plots must be affordable housing. And the logic behind it was to get people out of sink estates and to integrate with, if you like, the rest of society.
Yes.
So what we're doing now is we're removing that 25%, and then you are going to build potentially something that's going to be a sink estate in 20 years' time.
Well, it might not be. Some council estates don't turn up.
I think the affordable housing scheme didn't work, and I think the council housing scheme did. And lots of people have benefited, lots of families have benefited from buying the council house and passing it down. So I think that's a better approach. I get what you're saying as well, Nana, but I just think there is no way right now for people, normal, ordinary working people, to get on that ladder. And if this is a way to make it work, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, well, you know, people have a lot of respect now for the concept of council housing. I think the perception has actually changed now because we realise how beneficial it can be. But as ever, the show is nothing without your views. So let's welcome our great British voice now. Your chance to become part of the show and tell us what you really think about what we're discussing. Let's have a chat with Craig Shepherd. He's there in Devon. Craig, thank you for joining us. Your view, should we build more council houses?
Well, the simple answer is yes, we should build more council houses, but it's the way that we go around building these houses. So the current situation for large-scale developers is that they have to build a certain percentage of properties within their development as affordable properties. Now, what Michael Gove is suggesting is, instead of them actually building it, he's suggesting a levy. Now, there's no guarantee that levy will actually be used to actually build new houses. So even though the system at the moment that we have is very cumbersome and arduous to get through as a developer, it does actually guarantee that houses are built as part of it and not as a sort of a council estate on the outskirts of town. This is part of integrating everybody into the sort of same area. So yes, you will have some large houses, executive style houses, and you'll have affordable houses. But I think that's the way society should be, you know, a blend of different houses all in the same place. The new system that Michael Gove is bringing in isn't necessarily going to guarantee that the councils will spend that money accordingly to develop the houses that we need. I mean, I'm 54 years old now, and I worked out that the year I was born, the UK population was 55 million. Well, in the 54 years I've been on the planet, there's 12 million more people have joined the population of the United Kingdom. And if you project that forward another 20 years, we need those houses to be built to look after the people that we've got at the moment.
Listen, Craig, thank you so much for that. That's Craig Shepherd. He's a great British voice. Thank you very much. Echoing exactly my sentiments, actually. I agree with him right there. Let's see what you've been saying. I've been asking, should we build more council houses? And lots of you been getting in touch. Sean says, of course we should. We should have done this after Thatcher sold them all off in the 1980s. Kev says, I didn't think that the council actually owned any properties these days. They pass it all on to housing associations and the like. Sienna says, yes, but this time they must never be sold off. Do you think? Do you think so? Do you think they should be allowed to sell them off? John says, definitely we should build more houses, build them to a higher standard, though, than they have been over the last 20 years. Keith said this. He said it was OK, Maggie selling off all the council houses, but where did all the money go? Why did they not build new council houses? Good question. Pamela says councils should build more council properties, but should ensure a large part are bungalows because as people get older, stairs get difficult. That's the point, actually. And somebody did actually mention about 1 and 2 bedroom houses as well. Those properties are definitely what they should be considering. Right, but now I've got an exclusive. It's an exclusive conversation with our very own Calvin Robinson, who's on my panel today. He's made the Sunday Express today. He's been accusing the Church of England of holding him back because of his conservative views. Calvin, tell us more. What exactly? So what is this story? What's happened?
OK, so for the last few years, I've been discerning a calling to the priesthood, and I approached the Church of England about it, and they confirmed my calling, said, yes, we too feel that you are called by God into priestly ministry. So I gave up my career in education. I was a deputy head. I was a consultant for the DfE, gave all that up, went into training and formation in the Church of England. And they knew my politics at the time. They knew I'd been a Conservative candidate and a Brexit Party candidate, so they knew where I stood on these issues. But they've been playing with me for a while. I'm at the end of my training now. I'm leaving Oxford in the next few weeks, and everyone else is being sent into a parish to be an assistant priest, a curate. And I haven't, my assignment was taken away at the last minute, and I haven't been given one. So I ended up sending a subject access request into the Church of England to find out what's been going on, because no one's told me anything. And I found out that they decided months ago they weren't going to give me anything because it would be too problematic, because people would complain about my conservative views. Things like, and this is the bishops talking here internally, and I've got all the evidence of this, things like Calvin doesn't believe that the country is institutionally racist. That is a problem. Calvin has put out statements on GBNews saying that men should be more masculine. That is a problem. And I'm thinking, these are not anti-Christian issues. These are my political views that I believe fall in line with my Christian views, but there's nothing there that would set me apart and say this guy could not make it to the priesthood. So it's all very much a metropolitan liberal elite echo chamber of, all of the bishops are very much in the same wavelength on this, that they are gatekeepers, and if you're not one of them, they don't want you a part of what is now a club. And it shouldn't be a club. It should be about serving the people. It should be about serving Christ and spreading the gospel. And I think they've lost track. And we talk every day about how woke the church is becoming. We've talked today, both the archbishops are in the papers dictating liberal left policies, but they're not talking about, it's Easter Sunday, they're not talking about Christ being resurrected for our sins, and so that we can have eternal life in him. And I think that's where they've lost track. And I personally want to preach that gospel. I've been gifted a platform, and I've had an Easter special and a Christmas special on GBNews, and I've said, let's use this. Archbishop of Canterbury, come on my show. Bishop of London, come on the show. Let's tell the people the good news. No, we don't want to touch GBNews. That's the wrong sort of people.
That's interesting that they were talking about God passing judgment, but they seem to be doing it right there themselves, really.
Absolutely. They are Guardian readers preaching to GBNews viewers, and they sneer at us and they look down their noses at us, and they honestly think we are the wrong type and we are the wrong people. And I think God or Christ would reach out to everyone and would want everyone welcomed, and they don't seem to get that. It is a case of wokeness taking over the church.
Is it any surprise that people are just turning away from the church in their droves?
No. I mean, numbers have been falling since the late 19th century, but over the last 2 decades, it's rapidly decreased as the church has become more politically correct. And people keep saying the church needs to get with the times, the church needs to chase society. But no, the church shouldn't be chasing society, because society isn't necessarily going down the right track. The church should be proclaiming the good news as it is in Scripture, in the Word of God, the Bible. It should stick to that. And then that is an attractive lightness in the ever-surrounding darkness of society, that people, when they get sick of all the nonsense around them, they find the truth in the church, in Christ.
So what's your next move then?
Good question. I've got a few weeks left in Oxford. I've got nowhere to live and no job, so who knows?
Well, I don't know. I'm sure that they'll find work for you. That doesn't make any sense to me. The church need people like you who can connect and communicate with society. Listening to the Archbishop of Canterbury, whilst I have every respect for religion, most of the stuff that he was saying, I had no idea what he was talking about, and I consider myself as an intelligent person. It was disconnected. It didn't really reach the people who he was supposedly trying to help, and actually it sounded somewhat aloof, and that's not good.
Well, at the same time, it's not just me. There are priests out there that have been promoting Christian views that have been shut down and silenced. So they tried to silence me, but I'm not allowing it. But on the other hand, they've supported priests who are left-wing and priests that say, the country's racist, the church is racist. Priests that said supporting Sir Captain Tom Moore, for example, was the cult of white supremacy, which I think that statement's probably racist. They support priests that say a blessed Sunday to everyone except Boris Pretty and all other oppressors. This is not a very Christian message to be putting out. But people who put these kind of, critical race theory statements out get encouraged and promoted. There were 30,000 signatures to stop a racist priest getting ordained from the curacy to the priesthood. He got encouraged. Whereas I've had, less than a handful of complaints about me to the Church of England, because I've seen them all. Yet they've prevented me from going forward. And it just shows that I'm not one of them. They don't want me as part of their club. And it's not about them. It's about the people and it's about Christ.
And it's about spreading the message for those who can hear and actually saying it in a way that people can understand. Calvin, look, we wish you all the best with that. And if you want to hear the full scoop and read the full scoop, then make sure you get the Sunday Express. You can read it there. Right. Well, in response to Campion's comments, the Diocese of London told GB News, in the Diocese of London, we have a limited number of curacies available each year that are considered on a case-by-case basis. We work with and support ordinance throughout the discernment process to establish the right path for each person. In this instance, it was felt that there was no suitable option available that London could offer. Calvin continues to be a candidate sponsored for ordination. We continue to be willing to work with him to discern the right way forward, and we keep him in our prayers. Well, it's time now for Supplement Sunday, and it's the part of the show where me and my panel look at some of the other stories making the headlines and making the inside pages, actually. Today, I've got, of course, with me Conservative commentator Calvin Robertson and broadcaster Dee Kelly. Right, Danny, briefly, a story about bunting.
Jubilee Party plans are being threatened by a council edict demanding that lampposts undergo tests to ensure they are strong enough to hold bunting. Not strong enough to hold my weight, strong enough to hold a string with some flags along maybe a road or an avenue or something. £55 for the tests.
Oh my goodness. Right. So what do you think? That's a bit ridiculous, isn't it?
There's always something, isn't it?
Health and safety.
Wanting to spoil the fun, but health and safety.
They always
the right boxes. No, just put some nice Jubilee buns.
That's right.
And have fun. Have a celebration. Ignore that regulation.
Right. So, Calvin, what have you got?
So I've got the staring on the tube should be liable for prosecution in way of sexually motivated crimes. This is the head of British Transport Police. They're trying to drive out bad behaviour. I think this is the wrong approach. This is completely the wrong approach. This is symptomatic of a wider issue we have in our society. So, I mean, I'm from the Midlands, and I know you're from that area as well. You see people on public transport and say, hello, how are you doing? You start a conversation. You're nice and polite to people. In London, you're not even allowed to look at someone without it being... Now they want that to be an offence. We should be encouraging good neighbourly behaviour rather than punishing people who happen to stare at someone.
Well, can I just say I had somebody staring at me one time when I was on...
But that's not surprising, Nana.
Well, thank you very much, but it wasn't quite like that. So I smiled back and I was very nice and everything. And then he sort of started to do some weird faces, and I thought, okay, I should never have bothered to say... I don't want to talk about it too much. And then I thought, do you know what I'm going to do? Then he started to get a bit weird and start saying things like, hey, little woman, this and that, and doing this sort of, in this heavy sort of Jamaican accent. And then I thought, I'm going to get off at this stop. So then I got off at the stop, and he looked like he was going to try and follow me. Oh, really? But then just as he got off at the thing, then I jumped into the carriage and the door shut.
Wow.
And I waved at him, goodbye, darling. But that was a response of staring. Somebody was creepily staring. So I think there is some truth in that, but, I think there's a level as well.
But that's not staring.
No, he was staring.
He's trying to engage in conversation.
No, he was staring and then he engaged in conversation.
That's the difference.
But if he was to follow you, that would be dodgy, that would be creepy, and that would be, I think, something you would talk to the police about. But if he was just looking at you, I don't think you'd want to talk to the police about it, would you?
No, but exactly. That's moved on.
They've got enough things to worry about.
Well, and the thing is, they're so busy, they don't even do those things, do they? Let's be fair. Right, and finally, There's one from me.
Ooh.
Yes. Now, this one is a story in the Sunday Telegraph. Now, it is suggesting that British clocks should be put on French time to reduce lighting and heating bills during the cost of living crisis. Now, Lord Lee of Trafford, a Liberal Democrat peer, says that he will raise the question. He will raise a question in the House of Lords on whether double summertime ought to be imposed as a way to help struggling families cope with rising utility costs as soon as the Easter recess ends. It would mean that British clocks will be set 2 hours ahead of Greenwich Mean Time and during the summer months and 1 hour ahead in winter. Let's see what my panel make of that. Right, so Danny and Calvin, what do you think? Is this a good or bad idea?
No, we can't go on to French time. I do think we should stop going backwards and forwards with the clocks. It would be nice if we could just stay on British summertime. Now that we're on it, let's stay on it. You know, I do Australian TV every now and then, and for the last 3 weeks it's been different times, but it's been the same time for them. It's 10:30 in the morning for me, then it was 11:30, then it was 12:30. If you do anything, if you work in different time zones, it's just impossible switching, isn't it?
I'd like France to maybe put their clocks 2 hours ahead and get with the Brits.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do we have to do it? Why can't they? Why can't
Never follow France.
Right, so, well, anyway. So, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I don't know what's going on there.
No,
but
I don't.
Anyway, and finally, we'll talk. I thought I'd finish the show because I want to put my panellists under an excellent test to see whether chocolate browns really do have a unique taste.
Oh, they do.
So I've got 3 different brands of Easter egg, and both Calvin and Danny have to try each one blind and guess which brand each one is. Now, the 3 brands are Nestle, Mars, and Cadbury's.
Oh, yeah.
I think Danny will be very good at this one. Right, so let's. So these are the 3. These are
Honestly,
the 3. Right.
This is right up my street.
Okay.
Right, so, Danny,
I think I can tell by looking.
Just try a taste.
Okay, well,
try a little bit. What?
Not a Cadbury. Nestle.
You'd say that's Nestle. Okay.
That's definitely Cadbury's.
The same one?
No, Nestle or Cadbury's? Which one?
No, that's Cadbury's. That's Nestle.
Okay.
That's the other one.
Okay, go on then. So. Cool.
Yep, Nestle, 100%.
Yeah, you can tell that's Cadbury's.
Okay, go on then.
Yeah,
But just to double check.
Yeah.
Just to double check.
You can't beat Cadbury's Easter egg.
No,
and what about this one?
Best in the world.
No, let's see.
Well, that's got to be Mars.
Yeah, that's Mars. I'm having this one.
So let's see what we got here. You're absolutely wrong, actually.
That's
this
Nestle.
one is actually Nestle.
Oh.
This is Nestle.
This must be Mars then.
This one is actually Mars.
That's definitely
And the
Cadbury's.
middle one is Cadbury's.
There's no chocolate better than Cadbury's
So
chocolate Easter
you were
eggs.
absolutely... Well, do you think?
Yeah, best in the world.
I've got something for you, though, because I thought I might as well. Oh, that's the white one. I'm going to take.
Oh, Lindor!
I think that was... and there is one more. What's the other one?
What, you want to read these as well?
There's the
I take
third
it
one.
back. Lint is
What does it
right
start
up
with?
there.
Well, go on, you can
There's
have
a
that.
bell down there.
There we go.
Oh, thank
right,
you.
well, listen, on today's show, we've been asking, should civil servants, because swap it with the brown one, I want that one. Should civil servants interfere with government policy? And according to our Twitter poll, 7% of you say yes, and 93% of you say no. Thank you so much again to my wonderful panel. Broadcaster Dee Kelly, still eating, and Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson.
Happy
And
Easter!
of course, thank you to you for joining me. Happy Easter.
And the UK is looking dry in the east, but rain will continue edging into the west. Let's take a look at the details. After a mainly dry day, showery outbreaks of rain will steadily move eastwards across the southwest of England later this afternoon and into the evening on a freshening southwesterly breeze. The southeast will end Easter Sunday on a dry note. Sunshine will turn hazy through the afternoon as high cloud spreads in from the west. Outbreaks of showery rain will also be edging eastwards across Wales into the evening. These could be heavy at times, especially in the west. It'll be a dry, bright and warm end to the day for the Midlands. It'll turn cloudier through the afternoon and into the evening, but remain dry until after sunset. The northeast of England will also have a dry and bright end to Easter Sunday with some sunny spells. Cloud will increase here from the west through the afternoon with rain expected overnight. Rain in the west of Scotland will slowly start to edge eastwards into the evening. After a warm and sunny day in the east, cloud will increase ahead of the rain. Rain, which has persisted for most of the day over Northern Ireland, will gradually clear this afternoon with sunny spells and showers following from the west. It'll feel fresher too. Tomorrow, rain in the west will steadily move across the UK overnight, clearing all but the far east coast by tomorrow morning. And that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So Howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2